You know, when you were 7 years old, making a new best friend took exactly one half of a peanut butter sandwich.
Just half a sandwich. That was really it.
That was it. You would be sitting on a bench at the playground. You would notice another kid sitting by themselves, and you'd just hand them half of your lunch.
And just like that, the two of you were bonded for life.
Right. It's completely effortless. But today, you know, as an adult, asking an acquaintance if they want to grab a quick cup of coffee on a Tuesday afternoon, it can feel, well, as high stakes and terrifying as launching a rocket to Mars.
It really does feel that complicated.
It does. And that brings us to our deep dive today. We are so glad you are here with us. Because today, we are going straight to the heart of a universal, deeply human experience.
A struggle that pretty much every adult faces at some point.
Exactly. We are going to explore the mechanics of adult social connection. And we want to uncover exactly why making friends as an adult feels so incredibly difficult.
It really is the great unspoken challenge of adulthood. I mean, we talk about career struggles all the time. We talk about financial planning.
Oh, sure. And we talk endlessly about romantic relationships.
Right. But the struggle to just find and keep a good, solid friend, we tend to just suffer through that in complete silence.
We really do. And the contrast between our past and our present is just jarring. I actually love that analogy from the source material we're looking at today, the idea that adult friendship is like building a rocket to Mars.
It's a great visual.
It perfectly captures the overwhelming sense of difficulty. And for our listeners who might be learning English, when we say something is like building a rocket to Mars, it's an idiom. It just means a task is incredibly complex and risky.
Right, because think about what it takes to actually build a rocket.
Yeah.
It requires millions of dollars in funding, massive teams of specialized engineers, and, years of meticulous planning.
Less calculations.
Exactly. And even after all of that effort, it might still explode right there on the launch pad.
And for so many of us, sending a simple text message that says, hey, do you want to hang out this weekend? It carries that exact same emotional risk of explosion.
It is a phenomenal image because it highlights the fear of failure. As kids, there were no engineers required, right? You shared a toy, you played a game, and the connection was made.
Yeah, it was instant.
But as we transition into adulthood, those simple social mechanics break down.
Yeah.
And what is fascinating about the research we are exploring today is that it completely removes the blame from the individual.
Which is such a relief to hear.
It really is. It shows us that we didn't suddenly lose our social skills. The rules of the game just fundamentally changed.
Exactly. And we're going to guide you through exactly how those rules change today.
Hmm.
We're going to explore the 3 core barriers that stand between us and new friends.
The big three.
Right. We will look at the massive structural changes in our lives, the crushing reality of time constraints, and the deep emotional fears that keep us paralyzed.
And then, importantly, the solutions.
Yes. Then we are going to look at the practical, actionable counter moves that can help you break through those barriers. Okay, let's unpack this.
The best place to start is to look backward. We need to examine that playground analogy a little more closely because it reveals a very common trap we fall into.
What kind of trap?
Well, we look back at our childhoods with this warm, fuzzy sense of nostalgia. We remember the ease of making friends, and we naturally assume it was because of who we were.
Oh, I see. We think, oh, I was just braver when I was 10 years old.
Exactly. We tell ourselves, I was more outgoing. I was just more fun to be around back then.
Right. We blame our adult selves for losing some kind of, I don't know, magic spark.
Precisely. But the reality is, it wasn't magic at all. It was structure.
Structure.
Yeah. The biggest structural change that happens the exact moment we graduate and leave the school system is the sudden, really catastrophic loss of proximity.
Okay, let's pause there. Proximity. For our English learners listening, proximity is just a formal word for the simple state of being physically close to someone.
Exactly, just sharing the same physical space. And in the context of building a relationship, proximity is everything.
Its whole foundation.
It is. It is sharing the exact same space on a highly regular basis. And when you think about it, the traditional school system is essentially a giant, highly efficient machine designed to generate proximity.
Wow, that's a really interesting way to look at it. A proximity machine.
Right, because you were physically forced into the exact same room with the exact same group of 30 kids for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, for years on end.
You literally didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, you were assigned a desk in a classroom, and the person sitting at the desk next to you automatically became your proximity partner.
You couldn't escape them even if you wanted to.
No. And you shared identical schedules. You both walked into math class at 9 in the morning, you both went to the cafeteria at noon, and you both went out to the recess yard at the exact same time.
The structure of your day was perfectly aligned with the structure of their day.
And because of that intense, inescapable structure, interaction became entirely passive and automatic. You didn't have to put in any active effort to, try to make friends.
You just had to show up to class.
Right. You were constantly experiencing the two fundamental ingredients required for human connection: proximity, which we just talked about and repeated, spontaneous interaction.
And spontaneous is a great word there, meaning those unplanned, unforced moments.
Right, like complaining about a teacher in the hallway between classes.
Or dropping a pencil and having someone hand it back to you. Or just whispering during a really boring lecture.
So as a kid, you don't need a strategy. You don't need to be particularly brave or outgoing. The system really does all the heavy lifting for you.
And heavy lifting, meaning it does the hard work.
Exactly, thank you.
Yeah.
It forces you into these shared spaces until a bond just naturally forms. But then, graduation happens, we enter adulthood, and the environment completely changes.
It changes overnight. Instead of a highly structured schoolyard, we enter what researchers very accurately call the friendship desert.
The friendship desert. That is such a powerful phrase.
A desert is the perfect metaphor here. It is vast, it is isolating, and it completely lacks the natural resources needed to sustain life easily.
And in this scenario, the natural resource is the opportunity for spontaneous connection.
Right. In an actual desert, you have to search desperately for water. In adulthood, you have to search desperately for a shared social space.
But wait, I want to push back on this idea just a bit, because I am trying to map this onto my own daily life. And if you are listening right now, you might be thinking the exact same thing.
Go for it. What's the pushback?
Well, if I go to work every day, whether that is an office, a retail store, a hospital, or a construction site, shouldn't my coworkers automatically become my new best friends?
That is the logical assumption, yes.
Because I sit at a desk 3 feet away from my coworker for 8 hours a day. That is more proximity than I had with the kids in my middle school math class. Why doesn't that automatically translate into a deep friendship?
It is a completely logical question, and it is a trap that so many young adults fall into when they first enter the workforce.
We assume work is just school part 2.
Exactly. They assume the office is just the adult version of the classroom, but the dynamics are fundamentally different. Yes, you have a degree of physical proximity during your working hours, you share the break room, you sit in the same meetings,
Right.
but the illusion completely breaks down when you look at the broader landscape of your lives. Your broader schedules are completely chaotic and unaligned.
Oh, I see. Because in school, everybody lived in the same general neighborhood. We all had the exact same homework assignments to do.
Exactly. When the bell rang at 3 in the afternoon, we all walked home in the same direction, facing the exact same evening routine.
But your coworkers have entirely different lives the moment they step out of the building.
Completely different. When the clock strikes 5, the proximity vanishes. Everyone gets in their cars or gets on the train, and they scatter across the city to totally different realities.
Wow, yeah. One coworker is rushing to pick up their children from daycare. Another is commuting an hour away to the suburbs to care for an elderly parent.
Another is heading to a second job. Your lives do not overlap outside of those specific office walls.
So unlike in school, where your free time was identical to your peers' free time, your adult free time is just completely fragmented.
And because you lack those identical shared life schedules, building a real connection outside of the office requires actively navigating that friendship desert.
It's not automatic anymore.
Not at all. Trying to convert a coworker into a true friend means trying to sync up two incredibly complex, totally different life schedules. Making a simple dinner plan can require weeks of logistical negotiation.
Oh my goodness, yes. You have to check your calendar, they have to check their calendar, then someone's kid gets sick, so you have to cancel.
And then you try to reschedule for next month.
It's like trying to sync two totally different gears in a massive machine. It requires so much friction and effort. Negotiation is the right word. It feels like drafting a complex business contract just to eat a plate of pasta with another human being.
What's fascinating here is that recognizing the shift completely changes how we should view adult social dynamics. Proximity is no longer a given right.
It's not guaranteed.
Right. It is not provided to you for free by a school board anymore. If you want proximity in adulthood, you have to actively create it yourself. It is the very first structural hurdle you have to jump over.
Because the automatic nature of friendship has just evaporated.
Completely evaporated.
That makes total sense. We are suddenly responsible for the structure that used to be handed to us on a silver platter. And silver platter just means something that is given to you with zero effort on your part.
A great way to explain it.
And that brings us perfectly to the second major barrier we need to explore today. We just established that we aren't organically forced into the same physical rooms as our peers anymore. That is the structural distance, the loss of proximity.
Right.
But we also have to connect that physical distance to temporal distance, meaning time. It is not just that we lack the shared space, it is that we simply do not have the hours in the day.
Time. It is the great equalizer, and in adulthood, it becomes our most aggressively scarce resource.
And scarcity is a big theme here.
It is. When we are young, time feels infinite, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A 3-month summer vacation feels like an entire lifetime. But the reality of adulthood is defined by an accumulation of heavy, demanding burdens.
And it is not just physical time either. It is cognitive energy, the mental load we all carry around.
Exactly, the mental exhaustion.
We have our careers, which require massive amounts of mental focus and physical presence, simply because we have to pay the rent and survive. Then we have family responsibilities, which always take priority because those people are physically right in front of us, needing our immediate attention and care.
And then on top of all of that, we have the endless, relentless cycle of chores.
The maintenance of existence.
Yes, the maintenance of existence. Doing the laundry, going grocery shopping, cooking dinner, washing the dishes.
Cleaning the bathroom, paying the utility bills, taking the car in for an oil change. It is an endless loop of responsibilities that drains our energy tanks down to absolutely zero.
And because of the crushing weight of these immediate, unavoidable responsibilities, friendship time is consistently and predictably pushed to the absolute bottom of the priority list.
To explain exactly how this feels, I want to dive into an analogy that perfectly captures this dynamic, and I think this will really resonate with you listening at home. Think about how we structure a typical dinner.
Okay, a dinner.
In adulthood, friendship is treated like the dessert, while our daily responsibilities are the main meal. Let's really explore that. When you sit down at the table, you have to eat the main course first, right?
Right, you have to eat the real food.
That is the heavy, dense, necessary food. You have to eat your vegetables, your complex carbohydrates, your heavy proteins. That represents your job, your bills, your family duties, your chores.
And you spend your entire day chewing through that heavy main meal. It takes forever. And by the time you finally finish it, by the time the dishes are washed and the kids are asleep and the work emails are finally answered, what happens?
You are completely stuffed.
Exactly. You are physically and emotionally exhausted.
Right. You might look at the dessert menu, which, in this analogy, represents the idea of calling a friend to hang out or going to a local meetup group, and you might think, oh, that sounds wonderful.
I would genuinely love a slice of chocolate cake right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I would love to see my friend. But you simply do not have the room left in your stomach. You do not have the energy or the cognitive space to consume it. Friendship gets categorized as a luxury item.
It becomes a sweet treat that we only allow ourselves if we happen to have extra time at the very end of the day.
But the cruel, exhausting joke of adulthood is that extra time is a complete illusion.
It doesn't exist.
There is almost never any extra time. The main meal just keeps coming. There's always another load of laundry to fold, another unexpected bill to pay, another crisis at work to resolve. If we wait for extra time to magically appear on our schedules, we will never eat the dessert.
This analogy is so incredibly validating for people to hear because it removes the guilt.
It really does.
So many people feel like they are bad friends or antisocial because they keep canceling plans. But it is not that you are a bad person who doesn't care about connection. It is that you are stuffed full of the main meal of life. You are just trying to survive the day.
But unfortunately, consistently skipping dessert has real, painful consequences over time. And this brings us to a very specific psychological concept mentioned in the text: friendship drift.
Friendship drift. This is a crucial mechanism to understand because it explains how we lose the friends we already have, let alone how hard it is to make new ones.
Let's break that down for our listeners. Drift.
Imagine a small wooden boat resting on the water near the shore of a quiet lake. The boat isn't tied to the dock. There is no engine running. Nobody is rowing. The water is perfectly calm.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
But slowly, imperceptibly, the gentle movement of the water pushes the boat further and further away from the shore. That is drifting.
It's completely silent. It's not a violent storm that destroys the boat. It's not a sudden explosion.
Exactly. Friendship drift is not a dramatic, fiery falling out. It is not a heated argument over dinner where you suddenly decide you despise the other person and never want to speak to them again.
Right.
It is a slow, quiet, almost invisible drifting apart simply because two people stopped having the time to invest in each other.
It happens in these tiny, completely justifiable increments. Like 1 week your friend texts you to get coffee, and you reply, "I'm so overwhelmed with work this week, I'm exhausted, let's catch up next week."
And they completely understand. They've been there.
Right. Then next week rolls around, and their child catches a cold, so they have to cancel. You completely understand. Then the week after that, you have to spend your Saturday fixing a broken pipe in your apartment.
And the weeks silently turn into months.
Yes. The wooden boat floats further and further out onto the lake.
But you still genuinely like the person. If you bumped into them at the grocery store, your face would light up, you would give them a huge hug, and you would promise to get together soon.
But the connection is weakened because the time investment, the active rowing of the boat, wasn't there.
Exactly. It is a tragedy of logistics, not a tragedy of emotion.
So what does this all mean? When we look at this temporal barrier, this lack of time, it forces us to face a very hard, uncomfortable truth.
It does.
Making friends as an adult, or even maintaining the ones you have, means deliberately choosing to deprioritize something else in your life.
Because there is no magical extra time hidden in your week. Creating time for friendship requires sacrifice.
You have to actively choose to let the laundry pile up for another day.
You have to actively choose to leave work right at 5 instead of staying late to finish a project. You have to step away from your family for a few hours on a Sunday.
And that is an incredibly hard choice to make. We are conditioned to feel intense guilt when we step away from our core responsibilities.
We feel so guilty taking time away from our partners or ignoring a work email. It requires a fundamental shift in how we value social connection. We have to stop seeing friendship as the optional sugary dessert that we only get if we are perfectly caught up on our chores.
Right. We have to start seeing it as a vital, non-negotiable part of the main meal itself. It is the protein. We need it to survive.
That is a massive mental hurdle.
But let's say you clear it. Let's say you find a way to navigate the friendship desert, and you actually manage to carve out 2 hours of free time on a Saturday afternoon.
Okay, so you have the proximity and you have the time.
Right. You are still facing the third and final barrier, the final boss of adult friendship.
The internal emotional barrier, the wall of self-consciousness and grown-up fears. This is perhaps the most paralyzing obstacle of all because it exists entirely inside our own heads.
We have established that we lack the space and we lack the time. But this third barrier is really about our egos. It is about a massive increase in self-consciousness as we age.
To understand this, let's go back to the playground for a moment and look at the mechanics of childhood play.
Kids on a playground generally do not care about being cool. They do not have carefully constructed public personas.
They just want to play. They run around, they fall in the mud, they say ridiculous things, they laugh too loud.
Right. They are not paralyzed by the fear of being judged or analyzed by the other 7-year-olds. They act on pure instinct.
But as we mature, we develop an acute awareness of social dynamics. We become hyper-aware of how we look, how we sound, and how others perceive our value. We become terrified of rejection.
And the research draws a really profound comparison here to illustrate just how high the stakes feel. It points out that for an adult, asking a casual acquaintance to hang out carries the exact same heavy, awkward, emotional weight as asking someone on a romantic date.
That is such a fascinating comparison.
Let's break down the psychology of asking someone on a romantic date. It requires extreme, terrifying vulnerability. You are putting your ego entirely on the line.
You are walking up to someone and essentially saying, I have evaluated you, I find you appealing, and I am hoping that you find me appealing enough to dedicate some of your scarce time to me.
And if they say no, it is devastating. Even if they have a polite excuse, your brain processes it as a direct rejection of your core worth as a human being. It burns.
Rejection physically hurts. And what this research is telling us is that asking a potential friend to go get a cup of coffee triggers that exact same neurological fear response.
It feels like a romantic rejection.
It does. We start overthinking every single detail. We stand there holding our phones, staring at a simple text message that says, want to grab a drink after work, and a massive internal monologue kicks in.
We think, is this too forward? Are we close enough for me to ask this? What if they say no?
And then comes the most revealing, damaging question of all. What if they think I'm lonely?
Here's where it gets really interesting. What if they think I'm lonely? There is a massive social stigma attached to being an adult without a booming, vibrant social life.
We're terrified that by reaching out and asking for companionship, we are signaling to the world that we are desperate.
We feel a deep sense of shame. We have developed these complex grown-up fears of vulnerability, and so we build these massive emotional walls around ourselves. We decided it is safer to just stay home and watch television than to risk exposing our ego to the possibility that someone might not want to spend time with us.
And behind those protective walls, we make a very specific, incredibly harmful assumption about the rest of the world. We look around at our coworkers or our neighbors or the people we follow on social media, and we assume everyone else already has their friends. Their lives are perfectly full. They do not need me.
We imagine that everyone else is walking around with a completely full calendar, surrounded by an impenetrable circle of lifelong best friends.
Right. And we connect this to the bigger picture. We see the tragic, almost comedic irony of this situation. Because everyone is making this exact same assumption about everyone else, everyone becomes entirely passive.
And passivity is the opposite of action.
Yeah.
You sit back and you wait.
We all retreat behind our walls and wait to be invited, completely unaware that the other person is sitting behind their wall, also waiting to be invited.
Let's paint a picture of how this actually plays out on a Friday night. It's the standoff of loneliness. You have person A sitting on their couch in their apartment. They are feeling a bit lonely. They'd love to go see a movie. And they think about texting person B from their office. But person A assumes, oh, person B is so cool and busy. They probably have a dinner party to go to. I don't want to bother them and look desperate. So person A puts their phone down.
Right.
Meanwhile, 3 blocks away, person B is sitting on their couch, eating takeout alone, feeling completely isolated. Person B thinks about texting person A, but assumes person A has lived in this city for years. They definitely have a full group of friends. I'd just be intruding.
So person B puts their phone down.
Exactly. They are both paralyzed by the fear of being judged, and they are both waiting for an invitation that will never arrive. No one wants to make the first move because the perceived risk to the ego is simply too high.
It is heartbreaking when you break it down like that. So let's synthesize everything we have discussed so far. Let's look at the 3 barriers combined.
Okay, let's recap. First, we have no structure. We lost the forced automatic proximity of the school system, and our adult schedules are totally unaligned.
Second, we have no time. Our immediate responsibilities drain our energy, treating friendship like an optional dessert we never get to eat.
And third, we have increased fear. We are terrified of the vulnerability of asking, and we falsely assume everyone else is already socially fulfilled. When you layer these 3 elements on top of each other, you create a true perfect storm for loneliness.
A perfect storm. That's a great phrase.
Right.
For our listeners who are studying English, let's explain that idiom. It's a concept borrowed from meteorology, the study of weather.
Right. A perfect storm occurs when multiple, separate, highly destructive weather conditions, like a massive cold front, incredibly high winds, and a tropical moisture system, all miraculously collide in the exact same location at the exact same time.
And the resulting disaster is exponentially worse than any of those single elements would have been on their own.
So the adult struggle to connect isn't just one thing. It is the simultaneous brutal collision of losing our physical spaces to gather, losing our free time to the demands of survival, and losing our childhood bravery to adult egos.
That is the perfect storm.
That is why it feels as incredibly complicated as building a rocket to Mars.
It is a heavy realization. It can feel quite daunting to look at all those barriers stacked up. But there is a very powerful turning point here in the research. Understanding the precise mechanics of this perfect storm is actually the very first vital step in fighting back against it.
You cannot fix a machine until you understand exactly why the gears are jammed.
Which means it is time to pivot from the problem to the solution. The research doesn't just diagnose the disease, it provides a cure. It does not leave us stranded in the friendship desert.
Thank goodness for that.
It provides a map detailing a specific 2-step countermove to break through these barriers. A countermove is a deliberate action you take to reverse a negative situation. So how do we fight back? How do we build the rocket?
Step 1 is incredibly straightforward, but it requires a conscious investment of energy. You must actively create your own proximity.
We learned that the school system is no longer doing it for you. You are no longer assigned a desk next to a peer.
Therefore, you must purposefully inject yourself into environments where you will see the exact same group of people repeatedly.
Yeah.
You have to build your own classroom.
And the practical examples here are things we hear all the time, but now we understand why they work. Joining a specialized club, signing up for a recreational sports league, or taking a weekly cooking class.
Let's look at the mechanics of a cooking class, actually. If you sign up for a class that meets every Tuesday evening for 8 weeks, what are you doing? You are artificially recreating the structure of school.
You are forcing yourself into physical proximity with the same familiar faces.
And more importantly, you are creating a space for that repeated, spontaneous interaction to happen naturally. Let's walk through how that evolves.
Week 1 of the cooking class is going to be incredibly awkward. You don't know anyone, you feel out of place, you are focused on not chopping your fingers off.
You might go home feeling like it was a huge mistake.
But the structure forces you to return for week 2 and week 3. Yes. By week 4, you are standing next to the same person at the counter. You have shared context. You can turn to them and spontaneously say, I am definitely burning this sauce again.
It is incredibly low stakes. You aren't asking them deep philosophical questions. You are just complaining about the recipe. But over the course of 8 weeks, that shared frustration, those little moments of eye contact when the instructor says something funny, they build a foundation of familiarity.
You are slowly rowing the boat toward them. However, creating proximity is only the first step. The cooking class builds the foundation, but simply standing next to someone while chopping onions for 8 weeks does not automatically make them your friend.
You still have to bridge the final gap.
Right. When the 8-week class ends, if nobody says anything, everyone just goes back to their scattered adult lives. Which brings us to the second, much harder counter move you have to be the first one to ask.
You have to accept the vulnerability, swallow your ego, and take the social risk. You have to be the one to look at your cooking partner and say, hey, this class has been great. Do you want to grab a coffee next week?
This raises an important question, the hardest question of all. How exactly do we overcome that paralyzing fear of rejection? How do we silence that loud voice in our head that screams, what if they say no? What if they think I'm weird and desperate?
The answer is a fundamental logical shift in mindset. You have to embrace the harsh mathematical reality of the situation. Yes, you might be rejected. They might say they are too busy. They might awkwardly decline.
But here is the undeniable truth. It is mathematically impossible to make a new friend without taking that risk. If you do not ask, your chances of making a connection are exactly 0%. A 0% chance of success.
It requires accepting that rejection is not a reflection of your worth, but simply a logistical reality of adulthood. You might ask person A, and they truly might be completely consumed by the main meal of their responsibilities. They don't have room for dessert. It isn't personal.
You might ask person B, and they are moving away next month. But the beautiful simplicity at the end of this struggle is this: you only need one yes to succeed.
That is such a comforting thought. You only need one yes. You might face 3 rejections that sting a little bit, but that fourth person, the person who is also sitting on their couch, wishing someone would invite them out, they are going to say yes. And that single yes is the ignition of the rocket. It is the beginning of a real connection.
To succeed in the friendship desert, you have to transition from a passive waiter to an active builder. You can no longer rely on the environment to do the work for you. It takes a unique combination of traits. It takes the raw, egoless bravery of a 7-year-old child on a playground, combined with the deliberate scheduling and logistical skills of an adult.
It's a challenging combination, but it is entirely within our control. As we bring this deep dive to a close today, I want to gently recap the journey we have been on so we can see the full picture.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We started by dismantling the nostalgia of childhood, realizing that the ease of automatic friendship was simply a product of forced proximity and identical school schedules. We explored how leaving that system drops us into the vast, unstructured friendship desert of adulthood.
We then examined the crushing reality of time scarcity, understanding how the heavy burdens of career, family, and chores become the main meal of our lives. We saw how easily friendship is relegated to a luxury dessert, resulting in the quiet, tragic phenomenon of friendship drift.
And we faced the formidable internal walls we build to protect ourselves, the fear of vulnerability, the terror of romantic-style rejection, and the deeply flawed assumption that everyone around us is already socially fulfilled.
But most importantly, we learned the mechanics of fighting back, artificially creating our own proximity through structured routines, and finding the quiet courage to make the first move, knowing that a 0% chance of success is worse than any rejection.
We want to pause and reiterate something vital to you as you listen to this. If you are currently struggling with this, if you have felt the heavy isolation of this perfect storm in your own life, please know that you are absolutely not alone.
The fact that researchers are studying this proves that it is a highly common universal experience. It is undeniably hard. But taking that emotional risk, choosing to step out from behind your protective wall, is deeply, profoundly worth it.
It is the most worthwhile risk you can take. And to help you anchor these concepts to your own reality, we want to leave you with a small call to action. Take 5 minutes today, whether you are driving or cooking dinner or going for a walk, and reflect on your own history.
Ask yourself, when was the last time you made a completely new, genuine friend as an adult, and how exactly did it happen? Break down the mechanics. Did you naturally share proximity, or did you have to create it? Who took the risk, and ask the first question.
Analyzing your past successes is a powerful way to remind yourself that you already possess the tools to do it again. You have built the rocket before. And finally, we are going to leave you today with one last provocative thought to mull over. We spend an enormous amount of cognitive energy worrying that others will judge us. We are terrified that if we reach out, they will think we are lonely or awkward or desperate for attention. We let that fear paralyze us into passivity.
But if the research is right, if adulthood truly is a vast friendship desert, where almost everyone is sitting passively behind their walls, silently struggling with the exact same fears, waiting desperately to be invited.
Wait, isn't it highly likely that the person you are so terrified to ask is actually just as thirsty for connection as you are?
It completely flips the dynamic. You aren't imposing on them, you are offering them water in the desert.
Exactly. What if your terrifying risk, that deeply awkward, nerve-wracking text message asking an acquaintance to hang out, is actually the exact invitation they've been desperately praying for?
That is a very powerful thought to carry with you. Thank you for diving deep with us today.